The Casu Marza exited the drift with a violent shudder. Gwen swore. Cursed ship. The shuddering faded to a wheezing rattle, and Gwen pressed the control to begin re-energizing the E-drive. Nothing happened. She slammed her fist into it, and it reluctantly engaged. Damned cursed ship. Gwen started from the cockpit, then stopped, scowling at the unfamiliar indicator light on the panel above her. It certainly hadn't lit up in any of the Casu Marza's frequent alarms. She slapped the panel again, and the light winked out. Gwen snorted, turning away. The pulsing light resumed. She squinted. C-18. She sat down and typed into the terminal. A long list of codes appeared. C-18. Distress signal. She peered out of the cockpit window into the void, typed another command. Distance. 4 clicks. She couldn't afford this detour. It would divert energy from the E-drive, slowing the already interminable process. But if someone truly was in distress... Gwen engaged the pulse engines and turned the ship towards the source of the signal. Another indicator light flickered before solidifying on the panel behind her, illuminating the code next to it. C-17. On the terminal, the code read, C-17. Warning. Danger. Do not approach. Hello, and welcome to the Bad Spot, an actual play podcast where I, Matt Risby, and I alone am playing through Ironsworn Starforged. This week's Tale from the Drift was from Brian Bjorn, who was kind enough to share this wonderful little piece of writing with us, and I want to offer my most heartfelt thanks to Brian for taking the time to do so. If you want to roll some dice and write something for me to read at the beginning of a future episode, then the submission guidelines and contact details are on screen now. And once again, I must remind you that time is running out if you want to have something featured on the show. I have 22 episodes left, probably, and only about 9 or 10 slots open for Tales from the Drift, so get yourselves in gear. And whilst I have your attention, why don't you leave a like, subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you can follow along with the campaign each and every week. These things are really important for supporting the channel and supporting what I do, and if you really want to support the channel, then why not check out the Bad Spot Patreon. We recently passed 50 patrons, if you can believe such a thing, and I am absolutely overwhelmed by the support that I have received over the last year. If you want early access to all episodes, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and your name on screen like these lovely people, then follow the links in the description below. So last time out, we kicked things off by revealing that for the start of this season, I will be playing as Luna, who is currently lost and alone on Lastport Station. Archer has been kidnapped by some bounty hunters, and Griff has given her the slip, apparently beholden to some new mysterious protocols, which leaves Luna on her own to try and figure things out. Realising she must find Archer, Luna starts to try to piece together the manner of his disappearance, but as she does, she is set upon by some hired guns who missed Archer, but see Luna as a decent consolation prize. Luna is involved in a brutal street fight with the 4 hired guns, which soon spirals out of control as a separate group of thugs sense an opportunity to take Luna for themselves and join the fray. After they fail to subdue her physically, the street fight turns into a gunfight and the market empties, leaving Luna to fight off all comers. She manages to kill or incapacitate all of her attackers except one who makes their escape in the chaos. Not knowing who her assailants were, Luna attempts to get answers from one of the hired guns as they lay mortally injured. She manages to find a small comms device, which reveals the target of the botched kidnapping was Archer, and that someone known only as the Anvil put out the job. So, a little bit of a peek behind the scenes for you now. The Anvil, who was kind of mysteriously revealed at the end of that episode, is actually a character that I rolled up in the Season 2 finale, and I actually played and recorded a whole scene with them in, but I actually ended up cutting it out because the end of that episode and the end of that season was already kind of busy. Like, we had the revelation that the professor was still alive, and then we had the scene with Blake and the conduit and Vega losing control of his powers, and then we had Luna on her own, and it kind of just felt like too much, kind of like too many endings, and also to introduce a whole new character might have kind of tipped it over the edge. So if you're wondering why I didn't roll anything up for that, and I mean, I often don't roll anything up. I'm happy if I kind of have a good enough sense of where it's going just to kind of go with it. But I actually did roll that one up. If you're wondering why you didn't hear any of that, it's because I already did it. I already did it last season. But don't worry, all will be revealed in time, I promise. And also a kind of small side note, because someone asked me about it. I only made the decision to play Luna. Like, I made that decision like really late, and when I say really late, like, I recorded the Tale from the Drift and the recap, and was about to sit down and kind of start playing and recording, and then I thought, maybe playing as Luna would be interesting. So then I kind of pushed the episode back like a bit, and kind of reconfigured, and kind of made a character sheet and went from there. So it's pretty kind of straightforward, and it seemed to make sense, so I just kind of went with it. So yeah, a very late decision, and only about a week before the episode finally actually came out. And it kind of came together quite quickly. It made sense, and it seemed like a fun idea, and no one has complained about it, so I will take that as a tacit endorsement from every single one of you. A little bit of housekeeping before we launch into the fun, because I actually forgot to do it last time, and someone pointed out in the comments, because of my gunner asset, I should have taken some extra momentum during the fight, because I chose to pin them down. So my momentum is up to 8. So thank you for pointing that out. I am very glad that someone is paying attention, because I certainly am not. Whilst we're at it, we do have another little bit of housekeeping to do, and that is to reach a milestone on our vows. So if looking at the little triggers for that move, I think that we can say that fighting the goons and getting out of the marketplace definitely counts as a milestone. And I think it could be either defeating a notable foe. I mean, they're not that notable, are they? They're kind of disposable brigands, aren't they? So it's more likely kind of overcoming a critical obstacle, because she could have been captured too as well, which would have been pretty bad. So let's mark progress, taking us up to 2 out of 10. So Luna, what is happening? So she's got to try and make sense of all this, try and make sense of what's going on, and she's kind of turning it over. Like, they have only just arrived here in this sector, and they've never been here before, and already it seems like someone is out to get them, and whoever they are, they've succeeded, right? Like, whoever it is has gotten to Archer. They've kidnapped Archer and taken him away, and she can't even begin to like think why this is. Like, Archer is, has a lot of history, and, she has only known him for a relatively short time, but like, he's been fairly honest with her. So she doesn't think that like he has been here before, and that like she suddenly can't trust him. But like, she doesn't have anything on this. She's got like no information. She can't even begin to think of like why they would take him, why they would target him. And now she's the only person who can kind of do anything about it. She's got nothing to go on. She has like no more information. Although she does have one thing, I guess, which is the device that she got from the hired gun. And that is all she really has. But what does it tell her? Like, it just has the details of the job that was put out and who it came from. But I'm kind of wondering if we might be able to use it somehow. Like, we are not going to be able to go around and just ask about, having just committed several crimes in the marketplace with like dozens and dozens of witnesses. So like, we're going to have to kind of try and figure this out on our own. But first, I think we need to kind of get out of Dodge. Like, we need to move out of this area pretty quickly, because lingering here will do her absolutely no favors. So she starts to move and move as fast as she can go. And I think that, like, even for Luna, this feels like she's starting to maybe slightly panic or feel out of her depth, I think. And she needs to kind of find somewhere out of the way, somewhere that she can kind of wait for the heat to die down as she she just left the marketplace in a trail of bodies. And whilst this is clearly a lawless place, that sort of thing just doesn't happen without kind of consequences one way or another. So she leaves, and she's going to leave the way that she knows, I think, which is kind of heading back towards where the landing bays are, which, if you remember, they were these kind of vast spines that run off last port station, like the spokes on a wheel. Because she figures it's busier back that way. It's probably easier to kind of lose herself in the crowd. And that isn't faultless logic, I'm sure you'll agree. But, she hasn't got a whole lot to go on, so she's just going to have to kind of trust that instinct. Plus, I think that she would be curious to kind of head back towards the kind of the safety of the ship, perhaps, or maybe even to see what's happening around the ship. And that is also the direction where Griff disappeared off to, let's not forget. So I'm saying that's where she's going to go. So she is hustling along, and she's kind of moving out of the main market hall and down a series of fairly kind of identical corridors. And her leg and her hip are killing her, and she kind of limps awkwardly along. Now the gunfire in the market has ceased. People are starting to filter back, and she's bumping into them on her way and drawing kind of angry and she might think suspicious looks. She's the only one traveling away from the scene, and she's carrying a gun. But she's also trying to kind of do this without drawing any additional unnecessary attention to herself. And after a while, the corridors and walkways are full of people as it starts to open out into the main arrivals part of the station, these kind of vast hangars full of mechanics and engineers running repairs on beaten up haulers and transports. And here, work has just continued. It wouldn't stop for anything as trivial as a gunfight. And the noise and the din and the heat is sort of overwhelming. Even though the space is kind of huge and open, it is oppressive. And this is kind of perfect for Luna. This is just the sort of place where she can kind of slip away into a crowd, provided no one else is watching her or kind of looking for her or following her. She can kind of disappear here. She's still grasping the device that she took from the hired gun. It's the only thing that she's got to learn something from. And yeah, I think that she will be looking for somewhere kind of safe, somewhere out of the way, so she can examine it, kind of see what she can glean from it. So she looks around, and now she's finally convinced, not 100% convinced, but she's kind of convinced enough that people aren't looking for her or looking at her. They're far too busy, going about their kind of very important business to pay her any sort of attention at all. She looks and she spies this small kind of narrow shed building, and it's near one of the landing bays that's kind of close by, and it's next to a ship that's being worked on, but not currently being worked on, because it's kind of covered with this massive tarpaulin. And what she can see as she approaches kind of slowly and cautiously is that the ship that is being worked on is in no state to fly, so this isn't a priority job, because one whole side of the hull of this thing is exposed, kind of showing this rusted metal skeleton inside. This is a salvage job, I think, rather than a repair. And whoever's doing the salvaging is not around. They've clearly gone for lunch or something. So this is as good a chance as she will get at some kind of solitude, I guess. So she heads over to this little shed, which is kind of it's just slightly bigger than, one of those kind of festival toilet kind of cabins. It's kind of an upright thing. She kind of checks the door, making sure that no one's watching her before she does, and pulls it, and it's open. She steps inside, and it's small. It's like a little kiosk with a small window. There's a chair and a desk, shelves that extend upwards, and even though this is a small, confined space, it is filled with endless bits of scrap and junk and wiring and paneling and gadgets and doohickeys all piled up. But it's exactly what she's going to need. She clears a space to work, kind of pushes some bits off the desk and flicks on the overhead lamp. There's a little window looking out, but it's like so smeared with grease and it's kind of thickly caked on that it's nearly impossible for her to see out, let alone anyone seeing. So I feel like she feels safe, and that no one can see what she's up to in here. She takes the device, lays it down on the table, takes a little multi-tool from a kit that's just on the desk, and she gets to work. So I noticed this ability on Luna's Gearhead upgrade, which says, when you gather information by studying or disassembling a machine or device, re-roll any dice. On a match, you reveal an unexpected function, capability, or danger. Now that seems pretty appropriate for the situation, right? I think that's a pretty good little ability to have. So, and that's exactly what we're doing here, isn't it? We're trying to kind of gather information by studying a device. This is a very simple device. It's kind of just designed for conveying encrypted messages very kind of simply. They're not stored on here anywhere. It's almost like the space equivalent of passing someone a note. I think it's really that basic. But Luna knows that she can find some info by kind of getting into it, breaking into it, hacking into it maybe, to see if there's some sort of digital crumbs that she can follow and see where they lead. So as she does this, it triggers a move, and that move is Gather Information, which says when you search for clues, conduct an investigation, analyse evidence, or do research, roll plus wits, and that is very much what we are doing. We are pulling this thing apart so we can find some kind of clue that might lead us to Archer's whereabouts. So let's hack into this thing and gather some information, rolling plus wits. Okay, that is a weak hit. But it's a 5 with my wits of 1. That's a 6. And I think that with the 5, that's probably about as good as it's going to get. So what we can do is we can use that Gearhead asset, and we can re-roll this challenge dice, re-roll the 6, and then we could be in. So if we lock these two and re-roll the 6... There you go, that's much better. That 3 makes it a strong hit after all that. I really wanted to use that asset because I just found out on my little dice roller I can lock the dice. So I think that's quite cool. We got a strong hit. It says, on a strong hit, you discover something helpful and specific. The path you must follow or action you must take to make progress is made clear. Envision what you learn, then take +2 momentum. That 2 momentum takes us up to 10. We are at our maximum, and now I'm doing the momentum. I realise I could have just burned the momentum to get a strong hit on that roll. But hey, I wanted to use the cool thing, so leave me alone. And also now I have momentum to burn for something else. So, it was the right thing to do. I knew it at the time. So, something helpful and specific. Well, helpful and specific, that would be Archer's location, right? It would just be like where he is. But he's not got a tracker in him or anything. He's not tagged. So how could we possibly find that out? Well, I think that the bit of information we received when we fired up the device back in the marketplace was that Archer had been targeted by someone called the Anvil. Now we've hacked into the device, and I think the logical thing to discover is probably, and the most technically likely thing to have discovered was where the message originated from, in the station perhaps. And I think that from that, Luna can infer that's where Archer is. And to do that, I think that she's kind of taken this thing apart and kind of opened a little panel on it. And she's seen on the wall of this kiosk, there's a little terminal, the central info terminal, and it's kind of old and not been turned on for a while. But when she fires it up and gives it a little bit of gentle encouragement in the form of a big slap on the side of it, it comes flashing on, and there's a little bit of static on the small screen, but it clears as Luna dials in some knobs, and eventually a schematic of Lastport comes into view. It's very basic, and it doesn't even probably feature some of the newer additions that have been added to the station that she saw when they approached. So it's kind of out of date, but she's kind of hoping it will be good enough. And there's a little panel at the bottom of this terminal, and she pops it open, and uses some kind of wiring and hooks up the terminal to this little device and waits for a few seconds as the two machines talk to each other. And then I'm not going to say anything as crass and as cliched as a dot appears on the map. That would be way too easy. But maybe after a section of the schematic lights up, an entire level or a part of this station lights up, that is where the signal came from. And that is where Luna guesses Archer must be. So Lastport Station is this big, massive circular construction. That's what it was anyway when it started, when Cole and the other Paragons were here. But since then, and many decades have passed, it has been built on and expanded into this huge, teeming, like metropolis, basically. And Luna is currently towards the lower levels where the ships arrive and dock. And this signal, much to Luna's great displeasure, is all the way up in the upper reaches of the station. Not only is she going to have to rescue Archer's sorry ass again, she is going to have to work her way through an entire station of murderers and cutthroats to do so. And I think we can reach a milestone here, because looking at the move, we can definitely count finding out where Archer is as gaining meaningful insight. So let's mark progress, and we are up to 4 out of 10. So Luna isn't one for planning or elaborate capers. She's figured out where Archer is, and the way she's looking at it, she has little choice but to head right up there and just see how it shakes out, I guess. Take her chances and maybe get another chance to take, and keep taking them until she has retrieved him. Like, she knows she has something of a target on her back, but she's hoping that the hired guns who came after her might have just been pushing, like trying their luck. Like, they might have just been opportunistic, having tried to get Archer and realizing that they couldn't get him, gone for her, and that now she's dispatched him. That could be the end of it. And maybe if she just waits out a little bit, the heat around her will have died down. Now, I don't believe that. And I don't think that deep down she believes that either. But like, she knows if anything, it'll be worse, and there'll now be more people looking for her. More people will assume that she's valuable in some way, that she has some kind of price on her head they can cash in. And I think that once word gets around, it's just going to be much more difficult for her to do anything. And I think that that's what makes her realize that whilst her kind of quote unquote plan is quite straightforward, go to a place and get Archer, that is the extent of her plan. She might not be able to go about that quite as simply as she first thought. So she's going to have to maybe try and fly under the radar a little bit here. So she looks around this very, very kind of tight, small kiosk and notices that on the back of the door, there is a set of greasy, dirty overalls. And it's hard to tell if the material is brown or it's just decades of dirt. But that, as far as a disguise goes, will kind of be a decent start. She takes off her poncho, her grey woolen clan kraken poncho that she has had since Paxton Hold, which coincidentally was the last time that she rescued Archer. That's what she gained from that. And I think that somewhat sentimentally, she rolls it up very carefully. And then she sees on the hook there's also a shoulder bag, and she empties that out and stuffs the poncho inside. And then she slings the bag over her shoulder, and then she realizes that the other thing that she picked up in Paxton Hold the last time she rescued Archer was her rifle, and she's going to need to kind of hide that as well, because whilst people in Lastport Station are armed, it's normally with a sidearm, a gun on the hip, something like that. Not normally a honking great big military rifle. So she wraps that in some rags, sort of fashions a strap for it out of some cords, and slings that over her shoulder as well. And I think that as she does, she catches sight of herself, catches her reflection in this kind of grime-caked mirror. And her reflection stares back. The warm showers of purgatory seem like a lifetime ago. And she puts her hand through her hair, her last identifying factor that makes her stand out from a crowd, her raven black hair with blue and green streaks. And she digs around in the overall pockets and finds a dirty old woolen beanie hat and pulls it on. She is now ready to do this. And she steps out of the little kiosk carefully, looking around to see if anyone in the vicinity might have noticed her, but anyone that is close enough is just far too busy, to notice or care, frankly. She blends in okay, given what other people are wearing. People can't have gotten that good a look at her in the marketplace, she thinks. So, and it's not the kind of place that has kind of info screens everywhere with her wanted poster displaying everywhere. And what would she be wanted for? Like self-defense? I don't know. They jumped her and she just fought back. But then I think all bets are off because this isn't the kind of place with any sort of law enforcement. So whoever would want to come after her certainly wouldn't be doing so in the interests of justice. So yeah, she is apprehensive, anxious, but she has a disguise of sorts and she is managing to blend in with her immediate surroundings. And as she takes a few steps through the hangar, she feels something. She feels a little vibration in her pocket. She rummages around and digs out the device that she took from the hired gun, now reassembled and working as normal because she has a new notification. So what is that notification? What is the message she has received? Now, I had the idea before I started recording that this thing at some point would go off again, and I think this is a good time. I have no idea what it's going to say. So let's ask the Oracle, shall we? Let's roll up something and see what kind of message she could have just received. So 84 is search, and 31 is enemy. I mean, the obvious thing here is that people are searching for Luna and she's the enemy, but we already know that's true, and that wouldn't be a very exciting kind of thing to glean from this role. So what about enemy in a wider sense? Because in terms of enemies, we've got a lot of enemies, but none of them are present in this sector, which makes it slightly more difficult. The clans can't get in. We know that there are factions scattered around the place, but no one has any real power. The factions that we've met here so far, we've met Dr. Freeman and his algorithm operation, and after transporting the Mystic, we are square with him. That's fine. Then we met the Crimson Shards, and we don't even know what they want. They were super secretive, but they had an opportunity to take Archer out if they wanted to, and they didn't. So we are seemingly in their good graces, I guess. So that just leaves the Pact. The Pact are in total control of this sector. And we learned last season that they are trying to purge the Forge of Black Iron and destroy the Iron Gate network. They are searching this sector, and in particular the planet of Silex, for the substance that they call holy water, which we discovered can destroy and dissolve black iron. Now, we sort of made an enemy of them, didn't we? Because, somewhat accidentally, when we emerged in the eclipse through the Iron Gate, it just so happened that at the same time as we came out of it, they were trying to destroy it. And we sort of accidentally completely ruined the ship, which was called the Flagellant. And they tried to shoot us down, and they very nearly succeeded until they were pulled through the gate before the device they planted on it blew up and destroyed it forever. And what I'm thinking is whilst that was a brief encounter, I think that there was sufficient chance for transmission from the Flagellant to have reached Narthex Prime, which is the great city-state space fortress that is the base of operations for the Pact. So they know that a ship came through the gate. They know what class it is. And they know that since that encounter with the flagellant has not been seen or heard from again. And I guess the Pact doesn't get to be all-powerful and all-knowing without having their influence everywhere. And I think it's fair to assume that they have eyes and ears in Lastport, because word has reached them that the Outbounder-class vessel they are looking for is docked here. The enemy that is searching for us is the Pact. So the message that Luna sees appears on the device, and it once again shows the Eclipse, or sorry, the class, the Outbounder class vessel, not exactly the Eclipse. And it also lists the docking bay where it is, and the message is flashing red. It is a matter of urgency. This is a priority message. Now Luna has her own matter of urgency, her own priority, which is kind of rescuing Archer. But the docking bay is kind of pretty close to where she is now. So also she figures, like, what point is there in rescuing Archer if they can't get out of this place? So she figures she better go take a look and check it out. So she begins to work her way through the hustle of the docking bays, these vast structures holding hundreds and hundreds of ships. And she keeps her head down, but all the time she's fiddling with the beanie for fear of some telltale locks might come poking out. She's trying to not make her limp so pronounced as well. She is on edge, which is understandable given what happened kind of less than an hour ago in the marketplace. And after a while of weaving through the foot traffic and of the landing bays and ducking under bits of spacecraft that are parked haphazardly and dodging service droids and carts pulled by angry-looking mechanics who swear as they buzz past her, and their trailers containing all manner of scrap and spare parts. And she sees dozens of tattooed grubs picking clean salvage jobs and abandoned vessels. And Luna is wary of everyone, but the people that she's wary of most are the kind of the ones that aren't at work, the ones who aren't busy, the ones who are lurking at the periphery, the criminal denizens of Lastport, of which there are many. They seem to be scouring the place, scanning the new arrivals for an easy mark, their next victim, or worse. And I think after about 10 or 15 minutes of walking, she arrives at the docking bay where the Eclipse can be found. Now, this bay is less open, I think, than the others. There are some partition walls kind of shielding the Eclipse on maybe 2 of its 4 sides. And she doesn't want to approach too quickly or too obviously, so she moves slowly and stops by a pillar which is about kind of 20 meters away, trying not to make it too obvious that she is scoping out the ship, I think. And she's doing a reasonable job at first glance. A trained eye would easily be able to pick her out as suspicious and kind of scope what she's doing without kind of too much trouble. But, at a glance, she's kind of blending in. And she has a good look at the Eclipse. And it's very much as they left it a few hours ago. There's nothing out of the ordinary. But her spidey senses, her kind of streetwise sense, kind of feels that there's something off here. There's something not right. This seems too normal. But she kind of can't figure it out. She's scanning the surroundings and can't see anything. So she figures she's got to be bold, she's got to be brave, and starts walking towards the ship. But before she gets more than a few steps away from the pillar, she feels a tug at her sleeve. And it's pulling her back towards the pillar, and she spins around, ready to throw a right hook in defense. But it's Cole. For all her efforts to disguise herself, he's managed to spot her instantly. I think that's quite funny. And he's looking at her outfit a bit confused and kind of not wanting to know what's happening. But he kind of looks worried and says, "Where's Archer? Is he with you?" And Luna says, "He was. We got separated. Well, he got taken, I think." And Cole's like, "Taken? By who?" And Luna says, "Still trying to figure that out. What are you doing down here?" He gestures towards the ship, and they watch for a second before they see a guard come down the landing ramp from inside the Eclipse. And it's an armoured, heavily armed mercenary, easy to identify. And the mercenary is shortly joined by another, then another, and Luna notices 2 more behind the Eclipse. Cole says, "They've been here pretty much since we docked." Luna says, "What do they want with the Eclipse?" Cole says, "That ship is probably the most valuable thing in this whole sector." And Luna, she's used to kind of Archer speaking in riddles and not kind of really understanding what's going on, like all the time, and just wanting to get on with things. But she's kind of not getting it, and Cole has to spell it out. And he says, "You wonder why we can't use the E-drive here? It's because no one can. Short hops only. And even if you figured out a way to get around that, you'd have to run the blockade. You can't leave this place. No way in, no way out." And Luna's getting frustrated and says, "Well, we got in." And Cole says, "Yes, we did. And the people impounding our ship are mighty interested in figuring out how we did." And then something catches Luna's eye off to the side. She nudges Cole, who looks off in that direction, and she says, "Looks like they aren't the only ones." The armed guards surrounding the Eclipse raise their guns and level them at a target that Luna and Cole can't quite see from where they are, and they edge around the pillar to look at what the mercenaries are moving towards. And up ahead, the chaos of the hangar bays has been temporarily quieted, almost as if everyone has stopped in their tracks. The atmosphere has instantly changed. The workers and engineers going this way and that have all stopped to watch the arrival of an emissary from the Pact. There is a man, middle-aged with receding, sandy grey hair, sunken features, in skin so pale that it almost shines and cuts through the grime of the hangar bays. He is robed in the white and pink of the Masters. He is flanked by 2 hulking vanguard, standing to attention in their ornate bronze armour, holding long pikes. And behind them, Luna would maybe estimate 24 hooded figures. The acolytes, in their greyish blue robes, heads bowed, arms folded in front of them. Now, the emissary does not react at all to having multiple guns pointed in his face, and Luna and Cole aren't quite close enough to see or hear what is being said, and I think Luna's starting to get even more frustrated, not knowing what's going on, and starts to edge forward a little more, and Cole once again grabs her by the arm, and she's frustrated, she's annoyed with him, she tries to pull free, but then she realises he isn't trying to stop her, he's trying to get her attention. She turns and he points back in the direction of the Eclipse, and Luna can instantly see what he's trying to get her to notice. It's Griff. With the guards now having moved away, Griff trundles slowly towards the Eclipse. And Cole says, "Where the hell is he going?" And the 2 of them watch as Griff moves purposefully up the landing ramp, which then retracts into the hull behind him. And after a few seconds, they watch as the lights in the cockpit come on, the landing clamps holding it in place fall away, and the engines roar to life. The mercenaries and the emissary take a break from their standoff and turn to see the Eclipse lift slowly into the air. And Luna says, "Oh no." The conduit looks at her hands. There is still blood on them and she can't seem to stop them trembling. Outside the cockpit, the lilac swirl of the drift dances its mesmerising routine, one that usually has a calming effect on her, but not right now. Not even the 3rd stiff drink she's knocked back has made a dent in the crippling anxiety that has gripped her for the past 2 hours. She catches her reflection in the monitor on the console. Her eyes are heavy with tears, her face still caked with mud, her hair matted to her scalp. She was exhausted, wired, at the end of her wits, and now totally alone. She turns back towards the hold and looks at it again. She did so compulsively, knowing it would bring her nothing but pain. The twisted, bloodied body of Blake Sutton, crumpled in an unceremonious heap in the corner. The conduit turns back, almost as if to tear herself away, as her eyes begin to stream. The moment is interrupted by a beeping on the console, indicating the drop is imminent. She tried to compose herself the best she could, but she knew what she was dropping into. She knew it might be certain, an instant death. She gripped the yoke as the ship shuddered, and the purples in the viewport gave way to a vast expanse of glistening stars. A different alarm sounds on the console, and she flicks another switch to quieten it as she brings the ship around. She's searching through the viewport for something, checking her scanners for a sign. And it comes, first on the scanner, and then she can see it. In the middle distance, something comes into view. A large ship. A capital ship. A clan ship. A fleet of clan ships. This was it. She had made it. It was a miracle, but she was here, facing down the blockade. Within seconds, she saw the telltale flashes of silver streaking across the black. 2 snub fighters dispatched to intercept her. She saw the missile lock message appear on the console, and strangely, she had never been more relieved in her whole life. Thank you a million times. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe if you have not done so already, and click on the little bell icon so you can be notified as soon as the next video drops. I'll be back next time, but until then, it is farewell and safe passage.